Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. Today I'll be taking you through the Math No Calculator section of SAT Practice Test 3. I'll be showing you how to move efficiently through this section and how to recognize patterns on the SAT Math section to hopefully improve your score. Make sure to subscribe as we'll be releasing videos on every section of all 10 College Board released practice tests. Now, let's get started. Question 1. A painter will paint n walls with the same size and shape using a specific brand of paint. The painter's fee can be calculated by the expression NKLH, where N is the number of walls, K is a constant with units of dollars per square feet, L is the length of each wall in feet, and H is the height of each wall in feet. If the customer asks the painter to use a more expensive brand of paint, which of the factors in the expression will change? Well, the only expression that varies with the paint color and the paint type is the cost per square foot of the paint, which is K. So K is the answer to 1. Question 2. If 3R equals 18, what is the value of 6R plus 8? Well, we can go ahead and solve for R very quickly by going 3R equals 18, divide both sides by 3. We get R equals 18 over 3, which means R equals 6. Now we plug in our value for R, which is 6, into our equation. We have 6 times R, which is 6 times 6, plus 3. 6 times 6 is equal to 36. 36 plus 3 gives us 39. So our answer is 39, which is D. Question 3. Which of the following is equal to a to the power of 2/3 for all values of a? Well, when we have a to the power of 2/3, we know that our denominator of our exponent is what our square root is, right? So we have the third root because our 3 is in our denominator. So we have the third root, and then we know our numerator in our exponent goes inside of our box, right? So we have the third root of a squared. So we have to find our answer with the third root of a squared. Third root of a squared is D. Question 4. The number of states that joined the United States between 1776 and 1849 is twice the number of states that joined between 1850 and 1900. If 30 states joined the United States between 1776 and 1849, and X states joined between 1850 and 1900, which of the following equations is true? Well, if we know that 30 states joined between 1776 and 1849, and we know that X states joined between 1850 and 1900, and we know the number of states that joined from 1776 to 1849 is equal to 2 times the number that joined between 1850 and 1900. Then we know that that will equal 2 times x, so we are left with 30 equals 2x, which is B. Question 5. If 5 divided by x equals 15 divided by x plus 20, what is the value of x over 5? So the first thing we have to do is we have to solve for x. So we'll go 5 divided by x is equal to 15 divided by x plus 20. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by x plus 20 because I want to get no denominators. I want to get all my x's equal to each other with no x's in the denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now I've got 5 times x plus 20 divided by x equals 15. Now I can multiply by x, and now I have no more x's in my denominator, right? Now all I got to do is get all my x's on one side, and I'll be all set to go ahead and solve for x, right? So I'll go ahead, distribute my 5 to my x and my 20. 5 times x gives me 5x. 5 times 20 gives me plus 100, and that will equal 15x. I'll subtract 5x from each side to isolate my x, and I have 10x equals 100. 100 divided by 10 will give me x equals 10, but that's not my answer, right? You're going to be really tempted to go ahead and click on 10, or to go ahead and fill in 10. 10 isn't the answer, and a lot of times if you get halfway through a problem, that answer halfway through the problem could show up as an answer choice, right? So you always want to pay attention to what the last part of the question is asking. Well, it's asking for the value of x divided by 5. So we have 10 for our x divided by 5, which gives us 2. So our answer is C. Question 6. If x, y is a solution to the system of equations above, what is the value of x minus y? Alright, so first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to solve for our points. So when I see these problems up here, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a way where I can add or subtract them, or multiply or divide, and then add and subtract so that I can get rid of one of my variables and go ahead and solve for the other. So I see that we have 2x and I see we have 3x. Well, I know if I multiply my 3x by 2, and I have to multiply the whole equation by that too, so remember that. If I multiply my 2x on top by 3, well, I know my 3 times 2x gives me 6x, and I know my 2 times 3x will give me 6x, right? So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I can subtract my new equations, and eliminate my x, and then find what my y equals and solve for y. So I'll go ahead and do 3 times 2x minus 3y equals negative 14. Well, 3 times 2x gives me 6x. And then 3 times minus 3y gives me minus 9y. And then my 3 times my negative 14 gives me negative 42. And then next up I have my 2 times my 3x, which will give me 6x. And then I'll have 2 times negative 2y, which will give me negative 4y. And then I'll have my 2 times my negative 6, which will give me negative 12. Now I go ahead and subtract my bottom equation from my top equation. 6x minus 6x gives me 0x. Negative 9y minus negative 4y. Well, minus negative 4y gives me plus 4y. Negative 9y plus 4y gives me negative 5y. And then negative 42 minus negative 12. Well, minus negative 12 gives me plus 12. So I'll have minus 42 plus 12, which will give me minus 30. Now I go ahead and I divide both sides by negative 5 to isolate y. Now I'm left with y equals negative 30 over negative 5, which is the same as 30 over 5, which is 6. So now I have y equals 6. I'll go ahead and put that up here. Now I can go ahead and plug 6 in for y and then solve for x. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll use the bottom equation. So I will have 3x minus 2 times my y, which we said is 6, equals negative 6. So negative 2 times 6 gives me minus 12. So I have 3x minus 12 equals negative 6. I go ahead and I add 12 to both sides so I can isolate my x. Negative 6 plus 12 gives me positive 6. So I have 3x equals 6. I divide both sides by 3 to isolate x. So now I have x equals 6 over 3, which is 2. Right? So now I look up, what am I asked at the end of the question? I'm asked for the value of x minus y. We said that x is equal to 2. So we're going to go ahead and do 2 as our x minus our 6 as our y, which gives us negative 4. Question 7. The function f is defined by a polynomial. Some values of x and f of x are shown in the table above. Which of the following must be a factor of f of x? Well, we know factors of f of x are the zeros, right? So we know our zeros are when f of x equals 0. What is our x, right? So our x is 4 when f of x equals 0. So we know that our factor then must be x minus 4. Here's why. Because we have to have x minus 4 equals 0, right? And then we'll add 4 to each side to isolate our x, and we'll see that 4 equals x, right? So our answer is x minus 4. That is a factor. So our answer is C. Question 8. The line y equals kx plus 4, where k is a constant, is graphed in the xy plane. If the line contains the point CD, where c doesn't equal 0 and d doesn't equal 0, what is the slope of the line in terms of c and d? Well, what we have to pay attention to here, we know slope is rise over run, but we know we have a y-intercept of 4, positive 4, right? So we know our rise, we have to subtract that 4 that we're starting with. So our point is CD, so our y term would be d, and our run is going to be c. So we're going to have d minus 4 over c. We have to subtract that 4 because we're adding it in our equation as our y-intercept. So it's going to be d minus 4 over c, which is A. Question 9. In the system of equations above, k is a constant and x and y are variables. What value of k will the system of equations have no solution. So no solution will occur when the y-intercepts are not equal and our slope, the slopes are equal, right? So we can see right here with our 4 and our 7 that our y-intercepts aren't equal, so we're all set there. So now our x's and our y's have to have an equivalent ratio, right? In each equation, they have to have an equivalent ratio to each other. And here's why. Because that ratio gives us our rise over our run, right? Our x over our y. And we need those to be the same because that's our slope. So we can go ahead and see. We can see we have to solve for k, which is by our x. And we know that our x, our coefficient next to our x, is 4/5 of our coefficient by our 5, right? Because we have 4 over -5. So we can see that we have to have a similar ratio. We have to have the same ratio of 4 over -5 in our top equation here. So what we're going to do is we have 4 over -5. I'll go ahead and move that down here so you can see better. So we're going to have 4 over -5 is our slope for our bottom equation. And now our equivalent ratio is going to be k over -3. We multiply each side by -3 to get k alone, right? Now we have k equals -3 times 4, which is -12, divided by -5, which is equivalent to 12 over 5, right? So 12 over 5 will be our answer, which means our answer is A. Question 10. In the xy plane, the parabola with the equation y equals x minus 11 squared intersects the line with equation y equals 25 at 2 points A and B. What is the length of line AB? Alright, well, we know our vertex, if we look at our equation up here, the vertex is going to be at x minus 11 equals 0. We add 11 to each side, right? And we get x equals 11, right? So that's our vertex, okay? Now, each time that we move one digit right or left from our vertex, the amount that we move right or left from our vertex gets squared, and that equals y, right? Well, we know y equals 25, so we need to do 25, right? 25 equals what squared? Well, 25 equals what squared? We go ahead and square root 25. We get 5 can equal x, but we also got to know that -5 can also equal our x, because -5 squared will also get us 25, right? So we need to move a 5 to the right of 11, which will get us 16, but we can also move 5 to the left of 11 because -5 squared also gets us 25, right? So that will get us +6, +16, right? So those will be our two intersecting points. And so if we have 6 and 16, we know that the line from 6 to 16 is 10. So our answer will be A. And you could also just say 16 minus 6, that equals 10. Question 11. In the figure above, lines K, L, and M intersect at a point. If x plus y equals u plus w, which of the following must be true? Alright, well, we know that any angles that intersect like this are vertical angles, which will have the same measure, right? So this angle here and this angle here will have the same measure. And then we also are told that x plus y equals u plus w, right? So x plus y, we'll go ahead and mark it like that, and that will equal our u plus w. Okay. Now, we're given these 1, 2, and 3 equations here, right? And we have to solve for which ones are true. So we'll start with our first one. Our first one is x equals z. So go ahead and find x right here. We see z is right here. Alright, so in order to solve for whether x equals z, we'll go ahead and see. We know xy right here, right? All of that. We know that that equals u plus w, right? So if x plus y equals u plus w, then we know that z will have to equal t, because line M has to add to 180 on this side, on this side all here has to be 180, and this side all here has to be 180, so we know our z will equal our t, so we can go ahead and write down that. Okay, we need to see if x equals z. Well, x is right here with that little dot. We have z right here. We can go ahead and we can see that we have x and y, right? Well, x and y is equal to u and w. If we did 180 minus xy, we'd be left with z. And if we did 180, because we're looking at line k now, so if we look at line k, we know uw equals xy, so we could just call it xy. And then when we have 180 minus xy, we would have x left, right? So we can go ahead and say that x will equal z. So we know 1 is correct. Now question 2, y equals w. Well, we have y here, right? We know y will equal u. But what will y not equal? Y will not equal w, right? Well, it could, but we don't know for sure, and we don't know that it must be true, right? It doesn't have to be true to satisfy all of this, okay? Because they're not vertical angles, and the x plus y equals u plus w, that doesn't give us anything, right? Because it doesn't give us any indication that y would equal w, right? So y equals w is not true. Now we're left with z equals t, which we already found earlier that z must equal t because we have 180 across here, and then we have x and y and u and w, they're equal. X plus y equals u plus w is what we're told, which means that z must equal t. So our equations that are correct are going to be our 1 and our 3 only, which will be B. Question 12. In the quadratic equation above, a is a non-zero constant. The graph of the equation in the xy plane is a parabola with vertex CD. Which of the following is equal to D? Well, in order to solve for D, I gotta first know what my C is, right? Well, I already know my zeros, right? My zeros are going to be x equals 2 and x equals negative 4. Okay? So if I plot that, I've got 2, I've got negative 4. Okay, the midpoint between my zeros is always my vertex. So I've got my midpoint between my zeros, 2 and negative 4, is negative 1. So negative 1 is going to be my C value. Now I have my negative 1. I can go ahead and plug in my negative 1 as my x value and solve for my y value, which will be my D. Okay, so I have y equals a, and now I have x minus 2. We said our x is negative 1, so we have negative 1 minus 2 times our negative 1 plus 4, which simplifies to y equals a times negative 3, because negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3, and then negative 1 plus 4 is 3. So we have y equals negative 3 times 3, which is negative 9 times a. And we know our y is equal to our d, right? So negative 9a equals d. That's what we're asked at the end of the question. What is equal to d? Negative 9a. So a is our answer. Question 13. 24x squared plus 25x minus 47 over ax minus 2 equals negative 8x minus 3 minus 53 divided by ax minus 2. And this is true for all values of x that don't equal 2 over a, where a is a constant. We're asked to find the value of a. Well, I know that I can go ahead and I can multiply my equation by ax minus 2 on the right and left sides, right, to go ahead and just get my 24x squared plus 25x minus 47. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll go ahead and put times ax minus 2 over here. I'll be multiplying it here and at 8x minus 3. So I've got 24x squared plus 25x minus 47, and that's going to equal my negative 8x minus 3 times ax minus 2, and then I have minus 53 because my ax minus 2 right here will cancel with my ax minus 2 right there, so it'll just be minus 53. Now I can go ahead and I can multiply right here using FOIL, right? But really, I only have to multiply my negative 8x by my ax to get the answer, and I'll show you why. When I multiply my negative 8 by my a, I get negative 8ax squared. Well, I know that that has to equal my 24x squared, right? My first terms have to equal, right? So 24 equals negative 8a, because my x squareds will cancel. 24 equals negative 8a, divide both sides by negative 8, and I get a equals 24 over negative 8, which will give me negative 3 equals a. So my answer is going to be B. Question 14. What are the solutions to 3x squared plus 12x plus 6 equals 0? Well, right off the bat, I'm looking for things I can factor out. I see I can factor out a 3 because 3 goes into 3, 12, and 6. So I'll be left with 3 times x squared plus 4x plus 2 equals 0. Now I gotta find my solutions, right? Well, I can go ahead and I can see that x squared plus 4x plus 2, it doesn't factor, right? There's no factors of 2 that add to 4. So I'm gonna have to use the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, where my a value is my first term, my b value is my second term, and my c value is my third term. So negative b is going to be negative 4. We're going to have plus or minus the square root b squared. We're told that b is 4, so we're going to have 4 squared. 4 squared is going to get me 16, so I'm going to have 16 minus 4 times a, my a is 1, times my c, and my c is 2. 16 minus 4 times 2 gives me 16 minus 8, and 16 minus 8 will give me 8. Right, and then that's all over 2a. My a is 1, so I'm just left with 2. Now I can go ahead and simplify. I know that my square root of 8 can be written as 2 times 2 times 2, or 2 to the third. So I know that my group of 2 here comes out of my square root, right? That comes out. So now I have negative 4 plus or minus 2, square root 2 over 2. Now I can go ahead and simplify. I go negative 4 over 2. Negative 4 over 2 will give me negative 2. We'll have plus or minus. My 2 over 2 cancels, so I'll just have plus or minus square root of 2, which is A. Question 15. In the equation above shows how a temperature F measured in degrees Fahrenheit relates to temperature C measured in degrees Celsius. Based on the equation, which of the following must be true? Part 1, a temperature increase of 1 degree Fahrenheit, okay, so if we increase by 1 here, is equivalent to a temperature increase of 5/9 degrees Celsius. Well, we can see that 5/9 gets multiplied by F, so an increase of 1 in F increases C by 5/9. Therefore, 1 is true. Part 2. A temperature increase of 1 degree Celsius is equivalent to a temperature increase of 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. See, I can do this really quick, and you should be able to memorize this to move very quickly. If we see that C equals 5/9 F, we know F will equal 9/5 C, right? It just flips. So we know 9/5 equals 1.8. So we know that 2 is accurate, because if we increase our degree of temperature 1 degree Celsius, we'll increase our degrees in Fahrenheit by 1.8. Part 3, a temperature increase of 5/9 degrees Fahrenheit is equivalent to a temperature increase of 1 degree Celsius. Now that is not true, right? If we increase by 5/9 our degrees Fahrenheit, we're multiplying by a fraction. We're not going to get anything more than our 5/9 that we're putting in. So we're definitely not going to get an increase of 1 degree. So 3 is not true. So we can go ahead and put an X on that. So we need 1 and 2, which is D. Question 16. If x is greater than 0, which just means x must be positive, what is one possible solution to the equation above? Alright, so we're going to go ahead and multiply our x cubed by our x squared and our minus 5. So x cubed times x squared, you add our exponents, right? You're not multiplying them, you're just adding them. So that's going to give you x to the 5th, okay? So we're going to have x to the 5th, and then minus 5x cubed equals negative 4x. We're going to go ahead and add 4x to each side. Doing so, we get plus 4x equals 0. Now we can go ahead and factor out our x. So we factor out our x, and we're left with x to the 4th minus 5x squared plus 4. Right, and that all equals 0. So now, with x to the 4th minus 5x squared plus 4, we're looking for factors of 4 that add to negative 5. Factors of 4 that add to negative 5 are negative 4 and negative 1, right? So we're going to have x minus 4 and then x minus 1. Okay. Now we need one possible solution to the equation above, and this will actually be x squared. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It'll be x squared minus 4 and x squared minus 1 because our first term is x to the fourth, right? So x squared times x squared gives me x to the fourth. So now we are asked to find one possible solution. I'll show you guys both of them. So x squared, we know it'll equal 4 because we have x squared minus 4. We'd root both sides, right? And we'd get x can equal plus or minus 4, but we're told x has to be positive, so it must equal positive 2, right? It can't equal negative 2 because we're told x has to be positive. So one answer is x can equal 2. Now if we did the other choice, which would be x squared equals 1, we would know that x could equal plus or minus 1, right? But we're told that our answer must be positive, so it has to be x equals positive 1, right? So x can equal 2, x can equal positive 1, so my answer will be 1 or 2, and just give me one moment and I will put that down. X will equal 1 or 2. Okay. Question 17. If 7 over 9 x minus 4 over 9 times x equals 1/4 plus 5 over 12, what is the value of x? Okay, so we need our common denominator, which we have here in our 9. Now we can go ahead and subtract, right? So 7/9 x minus 4/9 x. 7 minus 4 gives me 3/9 x. We can go ahead and simplify that down. 3/9 is equal to 1/3. So we have x over 3, right? So x over 3, that'll equal 1/4 plus 5 over 12. Well, we know our lowest common denominator is going to be 12. If we multiply 4 by 3, we get 12. So 4 times 3, we get 12, right? We have to multiply our top numerator by 3, we get 3 over 12. So that's going to equal 3 over 12 plus 5 over 12. 3 over 12 plus 5 over 12 gives us 8 over 12, right? So x over 3 equals 8 over 12. We can go ahead and multiply both sides by 3, right? We get 24 over 12, which is equal to 2. Another way you could do it is you could see 3 times what equals 12, 3 times 4 equals 12, or you could see 12 over 4 equals 3, 8 over 4, x would equal 2. So now you've got 2 as your value of x. Question 18. Two isosceles triangles are shown above. If 180 minus z equals 2y and y equals 75, what is the value of x? Alright, well if we're told 180 minus z equals 2y and we're told y is 75, go ahead and plug in 75 here. So 2 times 75, that's going to give us 150, and that equals 180 minus z. So now we can go ahead, we can subtract 180 from each side, right, and we're left with 150 minus 180 gives us negative 30 equals negative z, which means that z will equal 30. So we can go ahead and put 30 in for z up here. Now, with an isosceles triangle, we know our angles here, which I'm showing with a little line across the angle. We know that they're going to equal each other because it's an isosceles triangle. So we can go ahead and say our 180 minus our 30, because we have our 30 as z, will equal 2 times, we'll call this angle, what's not used, we'll call this angle, we'll call it angle A, right? So that will equal 2 times angle A. So now we can go ahead and solve, right? 180 minus our 30, we get 150 equals our 2 times angle A. So we are going to divide both sides by 2. 150 over 2 will give us 75 equals our angle A, right? So we've got our angle A is 75. Well, we have x here that we have to solve for. So if we have 75 as our angle A, right, and I'm going to redraw this so you can see it better, right? If we have 75 as our angle A, and we're asked to solve for our angle x, we're going to go ahead and do 180 minus 75 and get 105 degrees. You don't have to mark your degrees symbol on the fill-in. It's just going to be 105 is going to be our value of x. Question 19. At a lunch stand, each hamburger has 50 more calories than each order of fries, right? So we'll go ahead and say hamburgers H, and we know that H is equal to fries, which we'll call F, plus 50. If 2 hamburgers and 3 orders of fries, so 2H plus 3F, have a total of 17 100 calories. How many calories does a hamburger have? Alright, so we want to solve for h, right? So we want to be able to substitute in for f here. Well, we know that if we subtract 50 from both sides of our equation up top, we would be left with f equals h minus 50. We plug that in for f. We have 2h plus 3 times h minus 50 equals 1,700. We go ahead and we distribute our 3 to our h and our negative 50. We're left with 2h plus 3h minus 3 times 50, which is 150, equals 1,700. We go ahead and we add 150 to each side, and we get 1,850, and that will equal 2h plus 3h, which is 5h. We divide both sides by 5. Right, we get h equals 1,850 over 5. 5 goes out of our box. We have 1,850 in our box. We go ahead, we do 5 goes into 18 3 times. We have 15, 18 minus 15. We have 3 left. 5 doesn't go into 3. We drop our 5 down. 5 goes into 35 7 times. We have no remainder, so we have 0. We drop our last 0 down. 5 goes into 0 0 times. So our answer is going to be 370. Okay, question 20. In triangle ABC, the measure of angle B is 90. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this. We'll go A, B, C. BC equals 16, so B to C will have 16. And A to C equals 20. Triangle DEF is similar to triangle ABC, so we'll go ahead and draw that down. Right, we want to make sure that we're putting our variables DEF and they're corresponding to ABC. Right? Where vertices DEF correspond to vertices ABC respectively, and each side of triangle DEF is 1/3 the length of the corresponding triangle ABC. What is the value of sine F? Well, the value of sine F doesn't vary since these are similar triangles, right? So we can just go ahead and find sine F. It's going to be the same as sine C, right? So we know sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So we're going to find our opposite. We don't have it. We'll call that x, right? So we have to solve for x and then put it over 20. All right, solve for x. We're going to go 20 squared minus our 16 squared will give us our x squared. 20 squared is going to give us 400. 16 squared, if you know off the top of your head that it's minus 256, that's great. And you can just go ahead and continue. If not, we do 16 times 16. We get 6 times 6, 36. 6 times 1 is going to be 6 plus our 3. We get 96. Put a 0 down. 1 times 6 is going to give us 6. 1 times 1 will give us 1. And then we have a 6 here. We have a 5 here. We carry a 1. And we get 256, right? So now we get 400 minus 256. That'll give us 144. And that's equal to x squared. Square root x squared to get x. Square root of 144 is 12. We get x equals 12. We can go and plug that in for x. Okay, now we need to find our sine of f. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Our opposite is 12. Our hypotenuse is 20. 12 over 20, which simplifies down. You can go ahead and simplify it to 6 over 10 and then to 3 over 5. So our answer is going to be 3 over 5. Thank you for watching Preeminent Test Prep. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share as we will be releasing more videos to help you prepare for the SAT.